Hi and welcome. So in this video, I'm going to share hints and tips around how I'm going to share how I measure my frustration, and hopefully you can learn some useful hints and tips that you can hopefully use in a way that's going to be helpful to you. So we're going to stick with this theme of frustration. So talking about frustration, so what I've discovered, what I've found out about my frustration is that it works. It works in a certain way. There's a certain pattern to it, and the pattern goes like this. So it's having, and I've spoken about my mind shift and how I was able to switch that mind shift, and hopefully that's helped me. So the first aspect is the first part of the model is exactly that. So it's having a bad frame of mind, a bad or a corrupted mindset. What happens then? So you've got that toxic, unhelpful mindset. Then what happens is that then leads to a thought, and that thought could be whatever your voice is. In my case, it was urges around when I'm sitting there. Urge is to just get up and go play on my phone or something like that, or just get distracted, because that's what your nervous system, your psychologically, you just want escape. That thought then translates into an urge. The urge then becomes so intense that you can't help yourself, and then that raises that bar, that raises that risk level, and then you do whatever behavior it is that you don't want to do, and that's the behavior, that's the process. So I was able to understand that. Again, this was only possible through reflection, through sitting down and through writing. And I was able to document my behavior over months, if not years, actually. And that's how I've come to the situation, come to where I am now, come to where I am now, and have this understanding about my own behavior. So I've written a few things down here. So what I've done is, and what I'm going to share are some of the techniques that I've used. So the first thing is that you have to interrogate your thought processes and what it is that's leading to the frustration. Now, just to explain and to give context, by frustration, what I mean by that is that psychological, subconscious level of frustration where unless you're journaling, you ain't gonna spot it. Honestly, I honestly believe that it's not gonna come to the fore. It's very hard to spot, and I'm just so fortunate. I thank Allah for the fact I've done this. I really do. So it's that deeper on a psychological level where you're stuck, you're feeling stuck, and that's what we're talking about here. So that's what I mean by frustration. So the first thing is understanding what the frustration, what all of that is. So it's about what it is that's causing that frustration. So you have to have that understanding. When I sit down to study, I spend about 5 minutes, maximum 10, where I'll sit down and I'll ask myself, what is it? How am I feeling right now? How am I feeling about sitting here and spending 2-3 hours of my day when I could be doing anything? What is it that I'm feeling right now? And by the very act of doing that, sometimes just diffuses whatever anxieties, nerves, or or feelings of, like yesterday, for example, I sat down, I was feeling a bit bored, I didn't want to be sitting there. And then by asking myself these questions, I was able to see that, and that's what happens a lot of the times for me, is that when I can see what's going on in my head, it kind of like, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it disappears, but it loses its power. It loses its power, it honestly does. So it's having those 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum of just having that kind of conversation with myself, just seeing what's going on in my head. Once I've done that, so that's number one, and then I've got this affirmation. I mean, I didn't intend, when I'd done it, I wasn't intending for it to be an affirmation, but it's become an affirmation where I remind myself, why am I sitting here and studying? What is it that's making me come here and sit down and studying? How am I not stuck? Basically, I remind myself how I'm not stuck, and I have a spiritual connection. I'll make it spiritual, because for me, that's essentially what life is about. It's about that end goal. It's about what's after life. So that's what I do. I just remind it, puts everything into perspective for me, and the more I've done it, I've been now doing it for, today would have been we're talking at least a month, because I don't do it every day. I do it when I have my days off from work and I sit down and study. So when I'm having those big sessions, bigger blocks of study, so I do that. Once I've done that, I've done my writing, so that's done. So that's what 1, 2. So I'm not going to include the mindset, because that needs to be done before you come to this measuring side, this measuring element of things. So the first thing is, so number one is have that conversation. So when I sit down, I have that conversation with myself. I remind myself why I'm doing this, using this affirmation that I've created for myself, unintentional, but it's there, and I'm going to call it my affirmation. So I'll do that. I then measure my frustration. So where am I on this scale? So I've got a scale from 0 to 10. 0 being 0 to 4 is calm. So I'm relaxed, I'm calm, nothing major's going on. Up here, 6 to 8 is mild. Really, I don't want to be in that stage, but it's mild. It's where something is bugging me, is where I am feeling a sense of I mean, I've never been that, thankfully, since I've done this, and I think it's all to do with that mind shift. So it's like where I might have those feelings of frustration that have come to the fore, and then the final one is the extreme, and I definitely don't want to be there. So I'll mark it, and now I've been doing it, like I said, I've been doing it about a month, and I have never exceeded, like I've never gone 4 and beyond. It's always been 3, 2, 1. It's never been 0, but it's always been on that 1 or 2. I would say on average we're looking at 3. I haven't actually sat down and measured it in the sense of like what the average is, but top of my head, thinking about it, I would say it's between 1 and 3. So that's that, and then I'll do the same thing afterwards. So I've done it before I've started, and then I've done it afterwards, so I can see what's going on. And again, it's powerful, because by doing this, it's just totally killing the power of that psychological reaction, that autopilot behavior from within me, because all of a sudden I'm in control of it. I'm looking at what's going on, and it just, like, that's been my experience of it. And then so then afterwards I do the same thing, and then also I'll briefly I then also monitor the thought aspect of it as well, because I think that's important, because if I get a thought of escape, what's triggered that thought. I thought it was important to monitor the thought, because it's the thought then that leads to the urge. So if I can find out what's going on at that thought level, or what is it that's triggered it, because it could be that that thought was getting triggered when I was doing a particular activity. So then it's right, okay, then what is it about that activity that I'm finding like I've got an issue with? What is it? And then I would be able to then explore that, and then that's a conversation in itself, and that could take me anywhere. So that's why I thought, when I sat down to do this, I thought that was going to be important to monitor those thought processes. And alhamdulillah, they've been good. I've not really had anything. I've never had the urge. It's always been, I think when I first started, I had I don't know, actually I can't actually remember. I don't even think that I've had like a toxic an unhelpful thought. So but it's there, I'm monitoring it, and so far it's not materialized, it's not surfaced into anything. And I think it all goes back to the mindset. Once the mindset is clear and I've sorted out my mindset, I think that's what's done it for me. And then the final thing is just a little conversation, a little reflection at the end of study. So if I've had a good day of study, I'll talk about that. And if it's not gone well, what is it? And it's just like a nice way to it's just like a nice way of closing the monitoring of my frustration. I find it's just a nice closing. And also, if it just helps, like, if there was anything, again, it goes back to the thought or anything like that, it's connected to that. And yeah, so it's essentially that. So it's those aspects, and that's what's helped me. And I think I think I'm going to end it on that. So no, thank you for watching.